Okay, it appears that we're live now on YouTube. So welcome all to this special meeting of council for Tuesday, December the 15th. We'll call the meeting to order and looking to approve the agenda. Are there any additions or changes?
No, not
Thank you. In which case I'll move the agenda.
from administration.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll move the agenda be approved as presented. Those in favor? Any opposed? No. Motion's carried unanimously. We're going to move right down to item D1, the approval of the minutes of the last special meeting, which was December the 10th. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing none, I'll move that they be adopted as presented. Those in favor? Okay, the minutes are adopted as presented. Moving on to item E1, the winter Main Street closure evaluation. Ms. Smithers.
Good afternoon, members of council. There I am. So I don't have a presentation, just given the quick turnaround on the report. So I'll basically just go through the highlights of it. At the council meeting on December 10th, there was a motion from council to have administration bring recommendations forward to council with respect to considering a temporary Main Street closure. So after connecting with managers of the relevant departments and members of CST, given the lessons learned from the temporary closure this summer, what we've determined is there are considerable challenges to putting forward a winter closure, as well as from the business point of view, there's limited support for such a closure. So the reasoning behind that on the logistical side and then the support side, the details are in the report. I think with that, I'll ask Dr. Cottle if you have anything you would like to add, and then I guess we can open it up to questions from council.
Nothing from me.
Okay. The report was pretty straightforward, and I appreciate done in jig time. Thank you very much. And it was very little time that had been had to consider the requests and respond with an informed report. I found the report quite helpful. Certainly addressed some of the questions I had in my own mind, and particularly in and around the complication of managing snow events and emergency access to Main Street. Clearly, closing Main Street in the winter is quite a different kettle of fish than closing in the summer months. But I'll open the floor up for questions of council from Ms. Smithers. And there we go, Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. Thank you, Ms. Smithers. So I noticed in the stakeholder engagement, we discussed that there's 37 businesses, mostly healthcare and galleries on Main Street that are either closed or doing business by appointment. And then there's reference to the restaurants. Do we have any idea as to how many restaurants there are on Main Street?
I do not. Dr. Cottle, I'm not sure if you have any information on that.
No, I know there's 195 businesses in the BIA, but I have no idea how many specific.
Because businesses, restaurants would also be included in cafes, et cetera, as well. Correct.
I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. I think that you actually answered the second question I had, which was how many businesses there are in the BIA, which is 195. So that's it. Thank you.
Are there any questions then at all at this point? Seeing none, thank you very much for doing the work. I will support administration's recommendation that council direct no further action, which of course then wouldn't require any motion at this time. But if other members of council feel so inclined to put a motion forward directing administration to enact a temporary closure of Main Street, now would be your opportunity. And it would appear that all of council is satisfied with the information and the detail that was provided in short notice on the question posed last week. So, Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I think the one thing I would like to say is that I noticed, I think that in last Tuesday when we spoke about this, I was concerned as to how busy downtown might be, and that this past weekend would be a really great indicator as to whether people were following the provincial guidelines with regards to non-necessary travel, et cetera. And although we knew that there were visitors in our community, you certainly did not see downtown bear the brunt of that. I think most were going to the ski hill. And I noticed at around 4 or 5 o'clock, they were coming back for coffees or to pick up dinner or whatnot on their way through. But in speaking with several downtown business owners as well yesterday, downtown was quite reasonable. So I don't really have the concern that I had prior.
Yeah, and speaking for myself, I didn't have a specific end result in mind when putting forward the motion directing admin to do this work, but I thought it was important that we take some time to consider options, and we've done that, and I'm quite comfortable in moving on with the status quo in this matter. So unless there's other thoughts, comments from council, which I don't see, we'll move on to item G1, which is the mandatory mass bylaw amendment for Main Street regulations. Ms. Hyde, you'll be speaking to that report.
Yeah, yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor Borman. So I have not prepared any slides, but I thought I'd just share my screen with the red line copy of the bylaw. So we're bringing this bylaw amendment forward in response to council direction last week to have a look at whether or not you would like to consider closing Main Street, or not closing Main Street, sorry, I'm on the last item, to requiring people to wear masks when they're outside on Main Street. So, sorry, just one sec, share screen. So the amendments that we're suggesting are just some sort of cosmetic amendments to the title and the whereas clauses to make it match what the amendment might say. And then the main amendment would be that a person entering, remaining on Main Street, the whole entirety of it, we're suggesting between 8th Avenue and Railway Avenue, must wear a face covering unless they're inside a closed motor vehicle. And the reason we say closed motor vehicle is because if you just use the word vehicle, bicycles are included in that. So I went with the intention that if someone was riding their bike on Main Street, you would like them to wear a mask. And that is really it for my presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I have one question. In the event that council chooses not to move or support any changes to the mask bylaw, is it necessary that we direct yourself to provide the correct spelling of premises in the bylaw title through a motion, or would that be something that we could just manage without a motion?
We can manage it without a motion. I was struggling with that one because I didn't actually notice the typo until I went to amend the bylaw, and it felt like since I was addressing an amendment, perhaps I should address the the spelling error, but it does not change the intent of the bylaw if we change the spelling, so we can just go ahead with that if you choose not to support the rest of the amending bylaw.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of ways the council could move forward at this time on this matter. One of which is for me or somebody to put the motion, the recommended motion forward, and then we could debate the content of the recommended changes, or we could simply choose not to put a motion forward and leave the mandatory mask bylaw as it stands today. And I'm looking to see if there's preference one way or the other, a specific preference from any member of council to proceed with the motion that was provided or not. And this would be a good time for somebody to put up their hand and say, well, Councillor Seeley.
I would like to proceed with the mask bylaw for Main Street, so I would like to proceed with it.
Okay. In which case then I will move the council give first reading to the mandatory mask bylaw amendment 2020-35 Main Street regulation. Councillor Seeley, did you want to speak to that motion?
Yeah, I do support it. It's about community safety right now and messaging. And I think Main Street would be a good place to have that messaging. Everyone wearing face coverings would, I think, show a level of support and comfort right now.
Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. In light of what was just explained to us by Ms. Hyde, I'd like to propose an amendment to take out closed from the motor vehicle section because I was anticipating this was more about sidewalks.
I'm sorry, what are you looking at? What?
To change the, actually change the wording in the bylaw.
What section?
5.1. And as Ms. Hyde just explained, that closed motor vehicles implies a motor vehicle, but also a bicycle. And I wasn't under the impression that we were regulating people on bicycles, because I thought this was about this width of the sidewalk. And bicycles are not supposed to be on the sidewalk unless they're under 12. So do we have to be, if children are riding the sidewalks, on the sidewalks with their bicycles, then this would cover them being on the sidewalks, but nobody else?
You're losing me here.
Well, I'm just thinking that if you're a motor vehicle and you're driving on the street with your bicycle, but I guess there are bicycle crossings as well, right? Because I was not anticipating that closed motor vehicles were going to imply that bicyclists also had to wear face masks.
I see.
This adds a complication to it because at this point in time,
Right, I understand what you're saying. So you would prefer that cyclists were not held to the same standard as pedestrians?
well, that's what I don't imagine that people will want to wear masks when they're cycling. But they do cross sidewalks and and children are allowed to be on sidewalks. So I'm just not sure how we exempt people on bicycles.
You want to put forward an amending motion to be specific that this wouldn't apply to cyclists.
That's what I'm trying to get at, but cyclists who are under 12 can go on the sidewalks.
Not downtown.
Correct. Regardless, Ms. Hyde, you have a point?
I was just wondering if you can see my screen. I just changed 5.1 to unless the person is operating a vehicle. So what I was trying to get at is it's confusing to pedestrians if they're running across the street, right? Like that's why I didn't restrict it to sidewalks. So it's sort of anyone who's outside on Main Street. And then I thought, but that doesn't seem like it should apply to people who are in cars or
Right.
vehicles, right? So that's where I was going with that, but I hadn't really considered the implication of a child riding a bike on Main Street. So under the Traffic and Safety Act, a bicycle is a vehicle. So again, my intention was to say, if you're driving down Main Street, we're not going to require you to wear carts if you're just outside, right? But then if you're on a bike, you're operating a vehicle. So you wouldn't have to have a mask on if this is what 5.1 said.
Right, so by the terms of this revision, cyclists would be excluded from the requirement,
Correct.
correct? Is that what you had intended, Councillor Sanford?
Right, that's what I'm trying to capture. And I think Ms. Hyde came up with the appropriate wording. So I would
So
like,
you'll need to put that forward as an amending motion?
right,
So
You are doing that?
yes.
Okay, so Councillor Sanford's proposed an amendment to bylaw as reflected in the 5.1 to make it clear that this wouldn't apply to cyclists. Is there discussion on Councillor Sanford's amending motion? Councillor McCallum.
I just wanted to clarify that we actually don't allow children or adults to ride down Main Street on their, on the sidewalks and Main Street on their bicycles as per previous bylaw. So I don't know if we're trying to fix a problem that shouldn't actually exist in the first place, but just a reminder that that's in place for downtown.
People ride their bikes on Main Street.
I'm talking about the sidewalk, Mayor Barman. Children
But-
or adults on Main Street are not permitted to ride their bikes down the sidewalk.
Correct, but that's irrelevant to the bylaw that we're talking about.
I'm
So,
just clarifying, there seemed to be some confusion. There was talk about children on the sidewalk on
Okay.
Main Street. And I was
Okay.
reminding everyone, we don't permit that as it is.
okay. So Councillor Sanford has an amending motion. Did you want to speak more to your motion, Councillor Sanford?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that since this bylaw covers Main Street all the way to Railway Avenue, I think the suggestion that Councillor McCallum is referring to about no sidewalks on Main Street was only a portion of Main Street. Isn't that correct? So it's not all of Main Street. So this applies to all of Main Street.
Yes.
So this will eliminate that need for people operating a vehicle on all of Main Street. That's just for clarification.
Okay, in speaking to your amending motion, I'll support the amendment, even though I don't think I'll support the final motion, which I'll speak to later. But if the final motion should carry, I would want to see that the bylaw change to reflect what we've just been talking about, the exclusion of cyclists. So I'll support your amending motion this time. The discussion on the amending motion, Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. And I would too support your amending motion, Councillor Sanford, although I am in the same, possibly the same pot as you, Mayor Barman, about supporting the main motion, but we'll see how it goes.
Further discussion on the amending motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're back then to giving first reading to the motion as amended. Councillor Hillstead.
I'd also like to propose an amendment. It would be to add the sunset clause particularly to this amendment. Trying to find it here, specific wording. Too far down. So in the analysis of alternatives, there's a amendment for section 5.1 ceases to be in effect on the day the province of Alberta announces an increase of retail store capacity to 25% or higher. So just like that, if this bylaw does go through, I'd like that sunset clause to be there, just so once we're back to a more relative normal, that this goes back to how we've had the bylaw in the past, which I think has been working fine for the whole time we've had it. So just one of those things, if things are going to pass, I'd like to have this sunset clause in there.
Okay, speaking to that amending motion, I won't support it only because I don't think it's necessary. We were clear in our earlier direction to have the mandatory mask bylaw added to the council resolution list so that each month council will be reminded that there's maybe a need to review the mask bylaw. And I believe that's adequate direction at this point. Will note that I understand the city of Calgary just extended their bylaw until the end of 2021. Of course, their situation is markedly different than ours here, but we don't know how long this is going to go on. Regardless, for that reason, I won't support your amending motion, Councillor Hillstead. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. Well, I won't support that amendment just from the perspective of when commerce does increase to 25%, there will be more people on Main Street and there will be more of a need for this. So I believe that this is going to have to do for a while, and it will be reviewed in the process that we've already set up. So I won't support the amendment.
Just to clarify, like this would only be on this new amendment. It wouldn't be on the whole bylaw as laid out by administration. So it's not to say the whole bylaw sunsets, it's just this particular motion, just in case there was any confusion on that. It was.
Sure, okay. Appreciate that clarification, although my rationale holds,
Yep.
Reviewing the entire mask bylaw is a monthly opportunity. For the discussion on Councillor Hillstead's amending motion. See none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated with Councillor Hillstead in support. Back then to the main motion as amended. Councillor Mara.
I too have a friendly amendment. If this bylaw should pass, I would like to see it a certain way also. And I would like to not only Main Street, but extend it to all areas, retail and food establishments that require an outdoor lineup. As there are many other areas of town, including a grocery store I was just recently at, the area is narrow and not everyone stands at their appropriate lines. So I'd like to add that amendment. And I believe Cheryl Hyde, our
Yep, I'll share my screen in 2 seconds. So all retail and food establishments that require an outdoor line up. Sharing my screen.
thank you.
I would say.
Where would that be added in the bylaw?
I would recommend, I'm not sure if I look at another thing, if you'll see another screen, you can let me know if this happens. I would recommend adding it as 5.2, so its own section. Require masks, all persons. Did you see my other screen or did you just keep seeing the screen?
No, we didn't see another screen.
I've always wondered what happens there. all person, we say a person, sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. A person outside any retail how about in a line up how's that?
Councillor Mara?
Or food establishment, probably.
Or food establishment.
Not really a friendly amendment, just noting.
Real amendment, you'll have to vote
Full on
on it.
amendment here.
Yeah,
So Councillor Mara, does that capture your intent?
Yes.
Sorry, are we using the word mask or are we using face?
face covering. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and have you spoken to your amending motion as much as you want, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, again, I won't support this amendment. I think it's becoming somewhat onerous, and also the enforcement of this could be a real challenge. Yeah, I just see this as being really problematic. My experience in moving around town is that most all outdoor places that I've been at, most people are wearing a mask already. But I'll speak to that when we get back to the main motion. If the amendment to the bylaw is carried, I really wouldn't. I don't think this is an advisable amendment at this time, so I won't support your amending motion. Other discussion on Councillor Mara's amendment, Councillor Seeley.
Although I appreciate the intent, I think it does add a complication that we don't need. Harder to enforce, and I think physically distancing can be managed in other locations, so I won't be able to support this.
Councillor McCallum.
I have a question actually for administration. If this motion passes, but the main motion doesn't, will this stand in the bylaw?
Not if the main motion is to amend the bylaw.
Yeah, exactly, Councillor, or I mean,
Okay.
Mayor Borman. Yes, if the bylaw itself fails, this section won't be added.
This is actually the only part that I think feels like makes sense in my mind. When you're walking down the street and passing people, you have the ability to sort of move out of the way. But when you're standing in one spot, you have, unless you're like, get back, Satan, pushing people away. That was just my question. I just wanted to know how that worked within that, because it's not an amendment to an amendment. It's a different part, an addition itself, but
it's an amendment to the bylaw amendment that's being proposed for first reading.
Because if the main motion passes, oh, this is for all of town, right? Okay, all right, thank you. I don't know what I'm going to vote. I have no idea this time.
Councillor Stanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. Well, in my experience yesterday, standing in line at the post office, which is not on Main Street, I had to do it a number of times because of my preparation. We were standing in line for a fairly long time. We were not on Main Street. And that is exactly where you should be wearing a mask. So what I've noticed is when people get out of their vehicle to go do some very specific chore, they will mask up in their car or get out of their car with the mask on. And if they're heading for a store, especially at the grocery store, retail, they'll have their mask on when they leave their vehicle. So I don't think it's an onerous thing to ask people to wear a mask while they're lining up, because I did that for quite a long time yesterday, and it was a good idea to do that, and yet it wouldn't have been regulated on Main Street. So I will support this amendment.
Yeah, that's good consideration. Could I see the amending motion again, Ms. Hyde? Technically, this wording wouldn't apply to the post office.
The post office has retail.
Okay. Yeah, they sell stamps. You're right. Okay, thanks, Ms. Hyde. Is there further discussion on this amendment? I'm thinking before I call the question. Councillor McCallum?
This will buy you some time to think, Your Worship. And this might apply to if there's any more amendments proposed to the final call on this question. But I note I've been at the post office, I swear to God, every single day for the last 9 or 10 days. And every single time I've gone, everybody has been socially distanced at least 2 meters. And so I'm trying to figure out what is the problem we're trying to solve here. If people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which I would agree with you, Mayor Barman, that more and more people, I see the majority of people are downtown wearing masks on Main Street. What is the problem we're trying to solve? If there isn't a problem as it is right now. And at this moment in time, and you can see how quickly we can call a meeting. At this moment in time, we don't have a problem, and our numbers are dropping drastically. So I think my response to that is I won't be able to support this amendment, although I appreciate this one of all the ones that have been brought forward the most.
And now that I've had a chance to think about things, this amendment, Councillor Mayor, is one that I could support, but it's being tied to the main motion, which I don't think I will be able to support, which means if the main motion fails, you've lost this opportunity, and it might be worth considering withdrawing that amending motion and putting it forward afterwards as a separate amending motion on its own. Ms. Hyde, does that make sense to you?
You still need a bylaw to amend another bylaw. So what I would suggest, just up here, what I would suggest is making another motion to remove the clause you don't want to have in there, which it is the one, right? 5.1. You could make a motion to delete 5.1 from the amending bylaw, then that one doesn't go forward, and you'll have this new one, which would now be 5.1. And so you still have an amending bylaw. It would just have a different amendment in it.
Okay.
Shall I talk some more, Mayor Barman?
No, I'm just thinking, so if this amending motion from Councillor Mayor was to make this direction 5.2, would that make sense? Because then it's a separate clause. Ms. Hyde?
Yes, that would make sense. It'll work.
Okay, so a friendly amendment to your amendment, Councillor Mayor, is worded so that this direction would be considered 5.2 of the amending bylaw.
That works.
And then when we get to the end or to the next stage, other sections could be removed, leaving that one. Okay, is everybody clear on this?
So let me just double check. So I just want to confirm, is this kind of the answer to the question that I was asking before, that if this motion passed, but the main bylaw fails or the main change fails, that this would stand?
If the main motion fails, then everything fails. So one would have to move to amend the bylaw by removing the components that one doesn't want to see in there. This is getting a bit messy.
I am. Well, democracy is messy.
So at this point, the question is, do we want to add the clause about masks and lineups to the bylaw that's before us?
So I like the idea of the masks and lineups as I consider what our community looks like as it reopens after 4 weeks of shutdown. But I don't, the other problem I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to solve is by masking on Main Street itself, based on the fact that we have 19 cases, and I bet you there's about 60 businesses that are going to be closed or super reduced hours downtown. And so it's almost like, that's why I keep asking that question, is that if Councillor Mara's motion stands, but the motion to
This
mask
is
up on,
amending,
yeah, the masking, the motion to mask up on Main Street fails, is there a, is there a way around that? Like, how do we get around that?
it's a little tricky.
That's what I thought you were doing by putting it to 5.2, was allowing it to stand should 5.1
Right, and
fail.
in order to do that, one would have to remove 5.1 through an amending motion, so that the mask bylaw wouldn't apply
Okay.
to people on Main Street, but would apply to people
in the
in
queues.
lineups.
Okay, all right. So we're going to vote on 5.2, which is Councillor Mara's amendment. Is that correct? Is that what we're about to do?
That's what we're going to do, yeah.
Okay, but
Councillor
first you're going to
Hillstead?
ask, yeah, Jeff, his
Councillor Hillstead?
question.
Yes. So if we're, again, looking to the future after this amendment, as this one doesn't, this amendment doesn't say Main Street or anything like that, we'd have to, if we were going to remove 5.1, wouldn't we have to also remove things in the title and stuff that address Main Street, because that would now become irrelevant? Just want to have clarity for when we go, if depending on how things go here, I just want to have some clarity, because Councillor Mara's motion is just kind of a blanket anywhere where you might be in a lineup in town, whereas the other one was very specific to Main Street.
Yeah.
Ms. Hyde, you have a point?
I was just going to offer that if 5.2 passes and then a subsequent motion to remove 5.1 passes, with council's permission, I will craft the motion to also fix the words in the whereas clauses and the titles, and I'll add that to the minutes, which you'll have to approve at your next meeting.
Roger that.
Okay?
Does everybody work, does that work for people? Ultimately, it would require approval at the minute approval stage.
Yeah.
Okay, further discussion on Councillor Mara's amending motion, referring to masks in lineups. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried with Councillor Sealy in opposition. With that, then I will move that section 5.1 be deleted from the bylaw. And speaking to that, I won't be supporting the bylaw if it meets that intent that's described in 5.1. And I can speak to that later on, but I would like to see the bylaw change with the addition of what Councillor Mara just proposed. So The only way I can get my cake and eat it too is to have 5.1 deleted. So that's the amending motion, delete section 5.1. Is there discussion on that amending motion? Councillor Sanford?
For clarity, are you deleting 5.1 plus all references to Main Street?
I think we can leave that to municipal clerk as an editorial change, which would be provided to council in the minutes approval stage.
Okay.
If that works.
I won't support deleting 5.1, mostly because I feel that where people are expected to walk in downtown on the sidewalks are very narrow, and passing people, especially where the trees are embedded in the sidewalk, people have to pass with very close quarters. And it's very hard to social distance on Main Street. I know I've tried it. I wear a mask sometimes. I don't wear a mask sometimes, but I have tried to social distance on Main Street, and I don't find it comfortable or easy. So I think having a mask bylaw, if you're going to be walking up and down Main Street, you're likely going to be going into a shop anyway. And the whole point of being on Main Street is to experience Main Street plus support the vendors on Main Street. So you're going to be going in and out of shops. And it doesn't really make that much of a difference to wear your mask between the shops. So it will protect the people that are on the sidewalk as well as you, because it's hard to social distance on Main Street on the narrow sidewalks. So I won't support removing 5.1 from the motion.
Further discussion on the amendment, Councillor McCallum?
Thank you, Mayor Barman. And thank you for muddling through this. I appreciate it. You know, in August, when we passed the mask bylaw, I think that you all recollect that people throughout Canmore sat down at their kitchen tables and wrote us and asked us to be different than the rest of the province. We were coming out of the winter and we were seeing numbers go up in terms of visitors in the summertime. And so ensuring that people were masked anywhere inside, I think was really important. And that, and coupled with the closure of downtown, really made a lot of sense. And, you know, in November, when there was the possibility of massive changes to, or large changes to the masking bylaw again, people of Canmore sat down at their kitchen tables and wrote us and spoke from the heart and asked us to not change anything. And as we saw numbers rise, I think people were more and more concerned. I don't feel that concern right now in the public. And I think that's a result of several things. One of them is the fact that our numbers are going down and have dropped drastically. Secondly, the rules that apply in Canmore apply across the province. Everybody's on the same level playing field now in terms of what we can and cannot do, with a few exceptions. For instance, our neighbors to the west. And I really think that where the real concern lay, and I guess this is where I was going at, and I'm really pleased, Councillor Mayor, that you brought that amendment forward, was when we're standing in line waiting and we don't really have the ability to impact the behavior of people around us when we're standing in one spot. When we're traversing through downtown, we have the ability to take different routes, etc. But I think it's that at that moment and throughout town where we're struggling. I would also point out that I would agree with Mayor Barman that when you go downtown, the majority of people are wearing masks already when they're outside. And so I think that those measures are sufficient, in addition to the fact that all along we have talked about being in line with the recommendations of the Ministry of Health. And so, and that has really served us, I believe, over the last 8-9 months of this pandemic, is making sure that we take any and all recommendations from our public health authority and implementing them in our community. And that has not been a recommendation that has come from the Public Health Authority. What has come from the Public Health Authority is that if you cannot be less than 2 meters away from someone, that you should wear a mask. And we are seeing people do that in droves, and we are seeing it happen across the province in all communities. So I will support the removal of this item from the bylaw. I would remind my colleagues that we can call up a meeting if our numbers go up, or if there's fear, or if there's a problem. We could change this at any time, but at this moment in time, I think that we are doing really well as a community. Based on what I saw over the weekend, people across Alberta seem to be following the rules about not unnecessarily traveling on the whole. So thank you.
Well, I should have started the timer. I think you exceeded your 5-minute time. Again, in support of the amendment, Councillor Sanford, we've just added in direction that people would have to wear masks when in a lineup. So anytime people are stopped on Main Street waiting to get into a shop, they would be expected to wear a mask. In regards to simply walking on the sidewalk, I feel that moment of mutual exposure is quite brief, and I'm not that concerned with walking past somebody in that split second if they're not wearing a mask. And as has been stated a couple of times, my experience is that most everybody is wearing masks already. So, and that's argument in support of the amending motion to remove 5.1. And still open for debate. Councillor Hillstead.
I'll also support the removal of 5.1. Basically, just echo what Councillor McCallum stated. Our case numbers are going lower. We can pull this bylaw back whenever we need to. Yeah, so just keep it short since she used up all the time. No, just kidding. But yeah, so I will be supporting the removal of 5.1.
Councillor Sanford.
The other thing we were going to be considering today was Main Street closure, which had that passed, it would have satisfied my concern about the close quarters on the sidewalks. So administration brought forward some very valid concerns about closing Main Street. And so that isn't going to happen in the winter, but I still think that having everybody on the sidewalks now is going to cause close contact. And just because people are standing in line, remember, if 2 people are wearing a mask, you're better protected. And so if you have to pass somebody wearing a mask on the sidewalk, it's going to be hard to do that, to be 6 feet away from them because of the narrowness of our sidewalk. So I think we have to consider what our options are here. Closure of Main Street is not an option. So I still think that keeping this clause in protects people on Main Street.
Okay, is there any other debate, discussion on the amending motion to remove 5.1? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried with Councillor Sanford and Seeley in opposition. Are there any other amendments bringing forward? Seeing none, then we're back to the main motion, which is to give first reading to the bylaw amendment 2020-35 now as amended. Is there discussion on the primary motion? I think we've all spoken fairly clearly to it in discussion around amending motions. But to Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. This might be the time to then amend the title of premises. So Ms. Hyde apparently is going to do that. So amend the wording of premises. as well?
The spelling, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah,
I will
we-
do.
Yeah, that'll be done, I think, without the need for directing motion. So on the
Correct.
primary motion, as amended, I will now support the primary motion with the removal of 5.1. Essentially, the only change is really the impacting change is the requirement to, or the direction to wear mask while in a lineup. And I think that's a reasonable tweak to the bylaw we approved some time ago. I agree with the observation Councillor McCallum made that things seem to be, we seem to be managing well, and certainly, and I've said this before, I'll say it one more time. My observation is most people are wearing a mask even outdoors without the bylaw requiring that. And certainly in indoor situations, I think it's very high compliance with the bylaw. So with this small tweak that's considered in the amendment, I'll support the main motion as amended. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I too will support the motion as amended. What we may have seen on the Main Street last weekend may not be what we see in the next 10 days through the Christmas season, because I expect that there will be a fair number of people in town. And the fact that most of the food services are now going to be curbside pickup, or everything's going to be takeout if you're serving food, it's going to require people likely to line up. And then the retail spaces that we have are relatively small, so having a volume of people inside the spaces will probably cause lineups as well. So I'd be happy to support this amendment to correct that.
The question, of course, arises is how would this change the bylaw be enforced? And I guess we'll leave that for administration to sort out. So other discussion on,
I
who
just
said that?
clarification there, if I could, do you want to know about enforcement, Mayor Barman?
Is it germane to the motion that's on the table?
No, fair enough. No.
Okay, then. Is there further discussion on the primary motion that's on the table? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried with Councillor Sealy in opposition. I'll then move the council give second reading to the mandatory mask bylaw amendment 2020-35 as approved at first reading. Discussion on the motion for second reading. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And I'll seek leave from council, go to the third reading of the bylaw. Those in favor? Opposed? Then I will move that council give third reading to mandatory mask bylaw amendment 2020-35 Main Street regulations. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And we will move on to item H1, electric sign trailer capital purchase. Mr. Como.
I'll be speaking to
Ms. Smithers.
this one as well. Yeah, sorry. And again, just a quick presentation. So last week, council directed administration to install entranceway signage to discourage non-essential travel in accordance with the provincial health regulations. So currently the town owns 2 electric sign trailers and 4 of those slide-in signs. We had some concerns around visibility of this signage given our very limited daylight hours this time of year. And then combined with the vandalism that can happen with the slide-in letter signs, we are proposing that we purchase another electric sign trailer for $20,000, and that would be funded through the tax stabilization reserve. We moved to the purchase for a number of reasons, the visibility being one of them. Another, just when we look at the cost of rental, it's quite likely that we are going to see a longer term need for COVID-related messaging. Right now, it's related to the masks and restrictions because of the most recent provincial directions, but it's entirely likely that this will extend again into the summer months with similar messaging around restrictions. And so over time, those rental costs add up. And also using our 2 existing signs starts to compete with communication needs we have for infrastructure projects, which is what we would typically use those signs for. And then lastly, we do have an opportunity to benefit from some cost savings through purchasing this sign now. We had originally discussed it being perhaps a capital project unto its own in 2021. However, if we purchase the sign now, we can get about we can get it for about 2/3 of what we would be paying next year. We have an opportunity that presents itself now. So this is definitely related to COVID-related communication and messaging needs. And as such, we are recommending that it be funded from the tax stabilization reserve.
Great, thank you. So to be clear, there's somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000 cost savings to purchase it now?
It would be about a $10,000 cost savings if we purchased it now. Yeah, we have a supplier that has one available at a reduced price for us.
So, okay, the price otherwise would then be $30,000, I see. Okay, are there questions for Ms. Smithers? Seeing none, thanks for your presentation. Pretty straightforward. I will move the council approve a new 2020 capital project entitled Electric Sign Trailer for $20,000 to be funded from the tax stabilization reserve. Discussion on the motion. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I think this is an excellent expenditure of funds. We use these trailers, COVID or not, for a variety of different messaging that we've wanted to push out to the community, starting with the flood and moving on to bear sightings, or if it's fruit season or whatever. So I think to have another one of these trailers within our cache of communication is prudent. And I appreciate the fact that we're going to save 10 grand as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I think you've summarized for all of us. So further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And with that, I will move that the special meeting of council be adjourned. Those in favor? Opposed?